And people will point to it and say, see, foreign demand, foreign official demand. Central banks have not bought any treasuries on net since 2014. Central banks stopped buying our treasuries 12 years ago. Every year since, global central banks have bought 1,000 tons or more of gold. There's no treasury secretary or American government of gold saying you can't sell your gold. What happened to gold when the war started? Gold prices fell. Why? Because people were selling their gold. Nobody needed a swap line. Nobody needed to backstop it. Nobody needed to do a gold buyback program to make sure long-term gold yields didn't get too high because too many people were selling gold. No, it just worked.
Luke Gromen highlights a major shift in central bank reserve preferences, arguing that global central banks have increasingly favored physical gold over U.S. Treasury securities. He points to strong annual gold purchases since 2014 as evidence of changing reserve strategies and growing demand for tangible monetary assets. Gromen contrasts gold's liquidity during periods of geopolitical stress with the policy support often required in government bond markets. His analysis suggests that central bank accumulation of gold reflects broader concerns about sovereign debt, financial sanctions, and reserve diversification, potentially accelerating the long-term move toward gold as a neutral reserve asset. Now we present the clips from Luke Gromen interview. Subscribe now. Metal Moves for daily updates on precious metals, economic trends, and wealth-building opportunities. Stay ahead of the financial shift and never miss a market-moving alert.
If inflation is high because U.S. debt to GDP is 125% and rising, we can't afford those interest rates. So how's the government going to react? What I've been saying forever is the government is going to come out and they're going to start capping yields. They're going to take actions that prevent bond yields from rising. Guess what? So there's this grand debate online. I got a couple of trolls that are like, this is not yield curve control because it's not the Fed doing it. It's technically not yield curve control. You're right. But do you want to be right or do you want to make money? It's functionally a soft form version of yield curve control. And why is this happening? Because we are trying to reshore and it is inflationary. And so now, you end up adding to the inflation of reshoring. And again, this is great for America over time. This is great for the working and middle class wages over time. It's not great if you're a bondholder. You had a 40-year bull run. It's not great for Wall Street relative to, right? Who won when we offshored to China? Wall Street won, Washington won, China won. They were able to finance their stupid war in Iraq without, interest rates rising. They were able to keep inflation from rising too much because China was disinflationary. Yeah, they were able to finance their debt and grow their debt without a problem. The bond market would have blown up decades ago if China hadn't come onto the picture with disinflation. So doing the reverse is going to, if you're going to reshore in offshoring meant Wall Street won, Washington won, China won, and you want to divorce China. Everyone's like, let's divorce China. Great. Okay. That means Washington and Wall Street have to lose relative to the people who lost the last time around, which was working class, middle class, wages, inflation. Inflation, wages, middle and working class all have to win while Wall Street loses on a relative basis. And Bessent has said that multiple times over the last 2 years, right? How many times has he said Main Street, not Wall Street? Wall Street will still be fine. I mean, no, trust me. Wall Street ain't going on food stamps. They're not going to need to go shop at Mamdani's, city grocer for at a discount. But Bessent's point is, listen, to rebalance these flows, you have to have Main Street do well relative to Wall Street for a while. And by the way, everyone's worried about the K-shaped and the political stability of America because of the K-shaped economy. This is how you narrow the two legs of the K-shape. Middle and working class has to do better, and the 1% have to do relatively worse. And if you change this system, you reshore, you inflate, this is how you narrow those Ks. It's not necessarily pleasant, but it's less unpleasant than the alternative. In the short run, arguably, yes. But then in the longer run, it comes down to what do you want? And what do I say by that is this is much more of a Henry Ford type of model. Henry Ford overpaid his line workers in the early 1900s because he famously wanted to have his workers be able to afford the cars that were coming off the line, the Model Ts that were coming off the line. And that was a sustainable business model. And that was a much more politically stable America. If you want to have the Chinese make our entire military for us, which they will in 10 years on the status quo, because they make it, they're better, faster, cheaper. Ask anybody that is an objective observer. Then that's the trade-off, right? That is, and again, now you're going to have cheaper living standards relative to what you would for the next 5 years. And then the 5 years after that, you're going to no longer be a sovereign nation. You are going to be a vassal of China. That's not acceptable. And so you need to change that. Well, you have to make a trade-off. And the trade-off is living standards fall in the short run for the consumer. But ultimately, you're talking about a world where profit dollars are much higher, but profit margins are lower. Right? If American workers pay a lot more or get paid a lot more, guess what they're going to do? They're going to consume a lot more. We have spent the last 30 years putting a bullet essentially in an American middle and working class by sending their jobs overseas. And so if you actually start bringing it back, if wages actually rise, there's a virtuous cycle. Now, it's inflationary. You're going to have to manage, and it's going to feed back on itself because you've got to keep yields low enough that the government can afford them. So that's only going to turbocharge the inflation. But yeah, you're looking at probably a 3 to 5 year period of falling living standards for 50 years of a renaissance. It's a good trade. 2 years, I think, to see sort of the origin story. And of course, you got to go back 30 years, really. But for sake of brevity, go back 2 years in time. And we've been writing ad nauseum for years. Anytime the dollar gets too strong, the dollar carry trade that was essentially kicked off by Bernanke cutting interest rates to 0% after the great financial crisis, right? Borrow in dollar at zero, go buy something else that yields higher, make money, easy. We've been highlighting that anytime the dollar gets too strong, that dollar carry trade unwinds. Now, some of that is structural, that carry trade. There's $13 to $14 trillion in dollar borrowings offshore via the Eurodollar system, right? So that is a dollar short there. So there too, anytime the dollar gets too strong, foreigners are going to have to sell dollar assets to address that. August of 2024, we wrote a report for clients highlighting something that had just happened in the prior 2 weeks then that had surprised us, which was it reminded us. We'd forgotten. We'd spent so much time focused on the dollar carry trade in recent years, we'd forgotten about the existence of a yen carry trade. And if you remember, back at the end of July, early August of 2024, the yen strengthened surprisingly. And all of a sudden, the yen carry trade started to blow up. Well, the yen carry trade is the vestige of the end of 1989, the bubble, the Japanese bubble blowing up, and the BOJ eventually, I want to say by 94 or maybe 96, cutting rates to zero. And people started borrowing yen and buying other assets, making money. And so the problem for the US, for Japan, for the world financial system is, and this is what we wrote in this report 2 years ago, which was, this is a problem. If the yen gets too strong, the world's going to have a crisis, a financial crisis. And if the dollar gets too strong, the world's going to have a financial crisis, because if the yen gets too strong, the yen carry trade blows up. If the dollar gets too strong, the dollar carry trade blows up. Well, that's a problem because the dollar and yen are just on opposite sides of each other. So back then, what we said tactically, what you need to do is basically spur and break, inject dollar liquidity, yen liquidity, try to keep the cross rate between the two in a level that doesn't trigger either carry trade blowing up.
Luke Gromen argues that rising U.S. debt and persistent inflation could push policymakers toward yield caps and softer forms of yield curve control to prevent Treasury borrowing costs from surging. He connects this policy shift with reshoring, higher wages, and a changing economic balance between Main Street and Wall Street. Gromen also highlights the risks surrounding global dollar and yen carry trades, warning that excessive currency strength can destabilize financial markets. His analysis points to a major transition in global capital flows, monetary policy and trade, with inflation, liquidity, and geopolitical realignment shaping the next economic cycle. Let's get back to the interview.
We said it was going to be good for gold. Gold was up 10, 15% in the back half of 24. So it's going to be good for industrial stocks. They were up 10%. It's going to be good for emerging markets. Emerging markets actually rose 10% by October of that year. And then Trump got elected, and that was bad for EM. So, you can't win them all. The other thing we said is they were going to need to do is cut interest rates. The Fed, are going to have to cut interest rates as soon as possible. September 18th, 2024, the Fed surprised with a 50 basis point rate cut. And people thought it was all around Powell trying to sway the election. I don't think it was him trying to sway the election. I think it was him addressing this issue where they are stuck between two high, voltage wires. And if they go up to this one, the yen carry trade, yen gets too strong, it's a problem. Dollar gets too strong, it's a problem. And once you understand that that's the operating environment they're in, then a prudent person who was not trying to blow up the system would do whatever they could to manage to keep things calm. You wouldn't start a war. You wouldn't start a trade war. You wouldn't start a war. You wouldn't do any of these things. And
you need predictability.
Yeah, you need predictability. And so, we said in 24, longer run, it's going to be really good for gold because really gold's the only way out for these guys now. Once the dollar gets too strong, triggers a crisis, and the yen gets too strong, triggers a crisis, you're done. Gold's the only way out for them. And, gold since then's, I don't know, up 3x, 4x, something like that. But that when you look at that context of today, this is why the leaks in the dam keep breaking out. The U.S. now says it wants to reshore its defense industrial base. The U.S. wants to engage in these trade wars. The U.S. wants to separate from China. That's fine. But the other side of the balance sheet, that means that Eurodollar system has to break. That means essentially, right? Because if you've got Eurodollar, what do you think they're doing with the Eurodollar assets that are sitting on offshore? They're buying American assets. That's exactly right. So if you want to get out of, and part of the reason all of this happened and was allowed was basically the U.S. needed to run the deficits to supply the currency to the world. Once we went off gold, and even really before then, but definitely once we went off gold in 71 under Nixon, the U.S. had to run the deficits to supply the world the dollars. Well, how do you run the deficits? You have to run bigger trade deficits. You have to run bigger fiscal deficits. And this was, of course, Triffin's dilemmas. Once the deficits get too big, it raises credibility issues of your currency and the Eurodollar was a way around that. The Eurodollar system, even though the credibility of the system was questioned decades ago, the Eurodollar system mechanically kept demand for dollars. And that's fine. And this has led to a situation where China essentially makes big chunks of the U.S. military for us. And now we're threatening China and we want to reshore. We want to divorce from China. Okay. If that's the policy we want to pursue, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's an accounting identity. It's the other side, debit credit of the Eurodollar system. If we want to reshore, then that Eurodollar system has to blow up. The dollar's reserve status, where the dollar is both a currency and global coin, has to end. Global coin has to become something that is a neutral reserve asset. No country's liability. And the Europeans couldn't have it if they wanted it. The Brits can't have it if they wanted it. The Japanese can't have it if they wanted it. The Chinese conceivably could, but they would have to open their capital account, and there's zero chance they're going to do that because that would allow inflows and outflows. They're not going to do that. There's no other currencies that can do it. And so what currency is going to replace the global coin Eurodollar system? Simple. It's gold. That's why gold's up 4x in the last 5 years. And I think it's going to go a lot higher. Now, with gold as a neutral reserve asset, now the U.S. can divorce from China. And people will point to it and say, see, foreign demand, foreign official demand. Central banks have not bought any treasuries on net since 2014. Central banks stopped buying our treasuries 12 years ago. And they've bought gold.
Didn't gold just recently overtake U.S. treasuries as the number one asset on Reserve Bank balance sheets?
Yes. And so they've been doing that for 12 years, but people say, well, the private sector has picked up the slack, and so total foreign holdings of treasuries are still at all-time highs. And that's true. I think he's right, and I think it's simpler than that of the U.S. used the dollar to hyperinflate Iran in 2012, right? We kicked them off SWIFT. We and the Europeans kicked them off the SWIFT system. Okay. We have weaponized the dollar against Russia repeatedly since 2013, 2014. And I'm not justifying the politics around it. I'm just saying, objectively, if you were a foreign sovereign country, okay, now it's happened twice. Then we weaponized the dollar against Russia again, 2022, froze FX reserve sanctions. Every year since, global central banks have bought 1,000 tons or more of gold. I was told people in the Middle East and longtime U.S. allies, they're still our allies, were quote unquote horrified by the implications of that. What are we doing now, right? With the trade war and economic D-Day, whatever this is that he's going to announce here, whatever, right? Like, your dollars are not your money, right? The UAE was like, hey, we're illiquid. We need a swap. Like, basically, even if you hold them, you may not be able to sell them, right? There's no CEO, there's no Treasury Secretary of gold telling you can't sell your treasuries. There's no Treasury Secretary or American government of gold saying you can't sell your gold. What happened to gold when the war started? Gold prices fell. Why? Because people were selling their gold. Nobody needed a swap line. Nobody needed to backstop it. Nobody needed to do a gold buyback program to make sure long-term gold yields didn't get too high because too many people were selling gold. No, it just worked. You don't need anybody. Everyone's like, oh, well, gold's anti-American. How is gold anti-American? It's the most American thing there is. Hey, you're Scott Bessent. You tell me I can't sell my treasuries? Screw off. I'm going to buy gold. That's freedom. Right? Yeah. Like that's what we were based this country on. Hey, I don't need your permission to do anything. I got gold. I'm going to go do it. So to me, the weaponization of the dollar it can't be unseen now. That's right. Exactly. You fly the wrong flag over your embassy, right? We're going to sanction your treasuries. Okay, fine. I'll just buy gold. Yeah.
Luke Gromen argues that the global monetary system is approaching a major structural transition as de-dollarization, trade tensions, and the weaponization of financial infrastructure reshape reserve strategies. He highlights how central banks have increasingly favored gold over U.S. treasuries, particularly after sanctions and frozen foreign reserves demonstrated the risks of holding another nation's liabilities. Gromen describes gold as a neutral reserve asset with no sovereign issuer, potentially providing an alternative foundation for the global financial system. His analysis connects reshoring, the eurodollar system, global liquidity, and rising gold demand to a broader transformation in international monetary power. Let us know your opinion on this analysis in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and found it valuable, make sure to subscribe and enable notifications so you never miss our latest updates on gold, silver, crypto, and global markets. Thanks for watching The Metal Moves. We'll see you in the next video.